Live from the Panera Studios, it's the Reading with Robin show, brought to you each week by my friends at Panera Bread, where it's food as it should be. It's where I go to begin my day. There's nothing like that first cup of coffee in the morning. It's also where I go to meet up with friends, and sometimes I even run into a book club. Panera is the perfect place to host a meeting. Everyone's happy with their extensive menu, from the delicious soups and salads to the sandwiches and flatbreads. And don't forget the takeout. The summer months are coming, and who wants to cook? You can order ahead, and your dinner will be waiting for you. That's all at your local Panera Bread. And now, enjoy the show. This is a huge day. It's pub day. It's Jane Green's latest, The Sunshine Sisters. I am a huge fan. Jane and I go way back, and we've done many interviews and chatted about so many beloved books, from The Beach House and Promises to Keep, Family Pictures to Saving Grace, Summer Secrets. I am thrilled we had Jane here in Rhode Island for Good Taste, the gorgeous cookbook that continues to dazzle. And I am thrilled to have New York Times bestselling author Jane Green. Welcome back to Reading with Robin.
Oh, Robin, it's always just a pleasure to be with you, whether it's in person or on your podcast. So I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, it's funny. I was just speaking. Reading with Robin turns 15 this fall, and I was thinking about how many wonderful authors and conversations and meaningful books have been discussed through the years. And you may be the Alec Baldwin of Reading with Robin. Thinking, who's been on the radio show the most?
Oh, I think really?
I think you might be the Alec Baldwin of Reading with Robin.
Oh, my goodness. Does that mean it's time for me to write a memoir? Because he's just brought a memoir out, so maybe that's what I should be thinking about next. Either
Jane,
that or doing impersonations of Trump. So
I will take both those things. I would love. Is a memoir something that you've been thinking of? Would you consider that? Never.
You know what? I have the most terrible memory in the whole world. I've lost years and years of my youth. I have no idea. I would be an absolute disaster. If I wrote a memoir, it would have to be faction, because I would have to make up, large swathes of my life.
Well, you'd probably be in line with everybody else, because I have a feeling there's a lot of that goes on, and sort of the disclaimer at the beginning about memory and keeping things a certain way to keep the story flowing. You could get away with it. I would read it. I wouldn't care if it was true or not.
Well, I'd also worry, there's that very fine line between, I was born with the honesty gene. I have no poker face. And so if I'm going to write about something, I'm going to write about it in as honest a way as I can. And I think I would hurt so many people.
Oh, okay. So we'll go to well, if you're going to do that, do the Trump impersonations. If you're going to hurt somebody, just go that way.
That may also be painful, but in a different way.
So many things to discuss, and I throw us for a loop on the possibility of the memoir to begin with. Did you read Alec's memoir? I didn't read it, but
no. I actually I've only just discovered his podcast.
I've heard it's wonderful.
And I'm completely addicted to podcasts, and I listen to them regularly throughout the day, and on these long car journeys, and in bed when I can't sleep, so I'm definitely becoming more intrigued by him.
I've heard that they're really good. His is really good, and I know I have a bunch that I subscribe to, and they come, so you subscribe to them, and then you've got them lined up on the phone, and to me it becomes this other guilt. It's like, I haven't listened to this one or that one, and it becomes a bit overwhelming, but they are wonderful, I agree, for the car rides or sort of in the background. Can you, when you're writing, and I know that you have a new fabulous place that you started where you're writing, right, the Bridge.
Yeah.
Can you listen to a podcast and be writing at the same time or
not?
No,
I can't even listen to music actually I can listen to classical music and sort of ambient. What do they call it? That not ambient. That's a sleeping pill. Ambient. Chill, exam study music. Anything without lyrics I can listen to, but lyrics are far too distracting for me.
I would agree. I know there are some writers who they say they can do that. I can't imagine how your brain sort of has to split to be able to pay attention to what you're writing and what you're thinking and not have the songs filtered in some way.
It's interesting, and because I'm now writing in a co-working space with other people, I do use the noise-canceling headphones. They are actually our savior. All of us have some version of them, and when we need to really focus, we all plug in. It means, talking time is done, and we're going to get down to the serious business of writing.
And how does that work? I know that people should go to janegreen.com, find Jane on Twitter, on Instagram. You're a master of all these social media forms, all of these platforms, and I was reading the post about the bridge and how that came to be. And so it sounds like such a great way to be with people and then, like you say, shut off from everybody when you need to.
It's an interesting thing because I realized, after 20 years of working by myself, either at home alone in my little home office or going out and working places, I lost my most recent office. And I realized I needed to rent somewhere because I can't get anything done at home anymore. There are too many distractions. But I didn't want to be by myself. I find it very lonely and isolating. And although I like to shut off when I'm actually writing, I also think it's very important as a writer of this kind of fiction to be in and of the world. And so I initially rented an office and asked a couple of friends to join me, and we've sort of expanded into this little creative co-working space with a number of people who are all working in creative fields who come together and work. And it's lovely because you have a supportive community. You can ask for help. There are people to have lunch with. And I look forward to going to work every day.
I think that sounds perfect, and I saw that you wrote, when good people come together, magic can happen.
Yeah.
I agree, because there are those creative juices. I get distracted, so I would just be like keeping everybody from their work in some way, but I can imagine the collaboration would be, amazing.
And the thing is, I'm also a bit like that. I'm a bit like you. I'm very chatty, and I'm quite social, but actually not everybody else is, and so I sit across from Lauren Weisberger, who of course wrote The Devil Wears Prada, and The Singles Game is out in paperback this summer, and she has a much better work ethic than me. So I walk in and I'm like, chat, and at a certain point she says, okay, Jane, come on, let's do it, writing time, and we take ourselves offline at the same time, and it's heads down for a couple of hours.
I think that's great. It's somebody that keeps you sort of in check, and you balance each other out like that. And that's great. So The Singles Game is out in paper this summer.
That's right,
Yeah, that was just last summer, that great event that you did together at Mitchell's with Lisa Lampanelli. That was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun.
The Sunshine Sisters is out in the world. I know you're so terribly proud of this book, and I can see why, because, as I said, I received the galley, I believe, last winter, and just plowed through because I couldn't put it down, and I just fell in love with these sisters and, yes, their mother, their self-absorbed narcissistic mother, and all of it. And I just wondered, was this something that was, I know how attached you feel to it, was this a story that you really had in your head that you really wanted to tell, and you say it's a story that sort of told itself and you're back to the kind of storytelling you want. And talk about that a bit, because it just feels so Jane Green. It really does.
So I was incredibly lucky with the first 12 books of my career, and I wrote them essentially all by myself. I came up with the ideas, I sat there, I wrote them, and when I'd finished, I gave them to my editor, and she'd make me tweak it, and that was it. And I think I became really known for a certain kind of a book, which was a gentle, character-driven, warm. There was a lot of warmth in those novels. They may not have had huge plots, but they, you felt really good after reading them. They were cozy. And then I changed publishers for a while, and I worked with a new editor who was much more plot-driven. She really was very well known for working on mysteries and suspense novels, and she required a much higher concept plot. And so I couldn't do what I'd always done. She wanted me to storyline with her, so we'd have these long sessions where we'd figure out the whole plot. And I'd start to write, but I think I was so focused on the plot, and they had much more suspense in them, and they were much darker. And because of that, I think that although those books were technically very good and garnered really strong reviews, I somehow lost the essence of what made my books what they were. And it really was the character. It was the characters and the warmth. And when I sat down to write the Sunshine Sisters, I actually had, I'm back at Penguin again. I had lunch with my editor at Penguin, and we brainstormed ideas, and she gave me all these ideas, and I wasn't sure, and I said, no, I can do that. And I got back home, and I thought, no, I don't. That's not the book I want to write. I want to write a classic Jane Green novel. And so, actually, as bizarre as this sounds, I to remind myself what a classic Jane Green novel is, I went back and reread my two favorites.
You did. I love that. I've never heard an author say that they've gone back and reread their own work for their new work. I love that.
I reread The Beach House and Second Chance because I wanted to really figure out what was it that I used to do that I'm no longer doing. And I realized it was all about the characters. And what I did for years, I had a rough idea of the story arc. I knew the message I wanted to tell. And my themes, they all seem to be much of a muchness. They're all essentially about people on a journey to find some sense of peace and happiness and their place in the world. And I thought, well, with the Sunshine Sisters, let me do it again. Let me have the arc of the plot. And I knew I wanted to write a mother who was estranged from her daughters, and a difficult mother who had been diagnosed with a terminal illness and called her daughters home to try and make her amends. I knew that I had that, but I had no idea how to start it, how to end it. I just knew that I had those characters, and I thought, well, I'm just going to sit and start to write these characters, and I'm going to let them tell me where to take the story. And so, you've got Nell, who's the oldest character, and Nell is she works on a farm in Connecticut, and she's very closed and shut down and quite introverted and has led a very quiet life. And she's a single mother. The great love of her life abandoned her when she became pregnant when she was very young. And she spent her life very self-sufficient and happy on her own. But then in her 40s, she completely unexpectedly finds herself being drawn to a woman in a way that she didn't or she doesn't expect. And then you have the middle daughter, Meredith, who's the people pleaser, who is engaged to a man that she's beginning to realize she may actually hate, but she doesn't know how to get off this train that's gathering steam. And then you have Lizzy, who's the youngest daughter, who's a chef, who's completely spoiled, completely selfish, very like her mother, and yet is so lively and effervescent that she somehow becomes the anchor for this family who manages to pull them all back together. And it just, these girls all were so vivid. As soon as I started to write them, I could see them. And the funny thing is, in many ways, there are bits of me all over this book, and my loves and my passions. But there's also the storylines have nothing to do with me, which is so interesting because so often I draw from my life, and I want to be able to say, yes, I did actually have a lesbian love affair with someone, or
you can say it.
Yes, I did.
That'll be in your memoir, Jane.
Well, yes, I'm going to have to make it up. Or yes, I did have an affair, but all the things that the women, that the sisters go through, I really haven't experienced it, and yet the joy
feels so genuine reading.
Yeah,
this, really.
just they were so real that it was incredibly easy to write these stories.
Is there anything that you'd want to write in? Like, do you ever want to write something in and give it to your character, something you would just never do? Or is there something you would never give to even a character that you loved so much?
Well, there are things that I wouldn't write about, only because and this is a slightly different response to your question. I'm going to twist your question slightly.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I probably didn't mean the question the way I asked it anyway.
Well, there are certain things that I avoid. I can't think of any. Well, yeah, there are things I wouldn't do. Like I would never say never. I mean, you say this, but I would be very loath to write about a child dying.
Yeah.
I also have always been careful writing about husbands, although I did have somebody meeting an untimely end in falling. But I generally think, be careful what you write, because it can, in this very bizarre case of life imitating art.
Right?
Life
a lot of
does
responsibility.
sometimes imitate art, and I think we have to be careful with what we write, because sometimes it comes true.
I know. That now we're sort of in Alice Hoffman territory.
Yes.
yes.
Thinking. A little bit of magic, it happens.
Right?
But I think there's something, whether it's energetic, I don't know what it is.
I agree. Yeah.
As a manifesto, even though it's fiction, when you're drawing from your life, I always think you have to be careful.
I absolutely agree, and I love when a story centers around adult children coming home. That was another thing that, it just had to say Jane Green on it, obviously. I was hooked. But just knowing what the story was about, and I'm speaking with Jane Green. We're talking about her brand new book. It's out today. It's The Sunshine Sisters. It's gorgeous, and you're so lucky that you're getting to read it. So that's what I'm going to say. And find Jane at janegreen.com, on Instagram. Check out the gorgeous kitchen pictures. Love. I hope we'll get to talk about that. Also on Twitter, and I'm reading from the book now. It doesn't matter how many years go by, how grown up we think we are, how much we presume we have changed or evolved. When we are back in our childhood homes, we become exactly who we have always been. And that is so true. I mean, this book is so, I should actually, I'm going to post a picture of this when I put this up, because you should see what this book looks like. And Nell coming in said, and I'm reading also, sometimes Nell can smell her mother's state of mind as soon as she walks in. Other times she has to tiptoe around waiting to see the expression on her mother's face. And Meredith has described it as a veil. So, talk a little bit about each sister's relationship with Ronni.
Well, Ronni is this larger than life, self-absorbed, as you described in the beginning, narcissistic woman who really never had a maternal bone in her body. She is an actress. She's English. She was the spoiled and adored daughter who got a role in films and came over to America, to Hollywood, and really made it as a B-movie actress. And I very much was thinking, well, when I was writing Ronni, I was thinking partly of Joan Collins, and a young Joan Collins particularly, and partly of the character Aurora that Shirley MacLaine played in Terms of Endearment. This sort of yes, larger than life, really quite fun and glamorous, but awful to have as a mother. But I also I wanted her to have the kind of volatility that can really do tremendous damage to daughters particularly. And that's the thing. Ronni is so self-absorbed and selfish, but she's also she's moody, and she's angry and difficult, and the girls never know. It's like shifting sands. They walk on eggshells around her, because when she's good, when she's up, there's no one more fun than Ronni. But they walk in and they have to sniff the air, take the temperature of the room before they walk in, to try and change how they are when they're around her, because they're so frightened that she's going to be in a bad space. And I think there are many, many women out there who experience this kind of thing with their mothers. And I spoke to a lot of women about it, and it just seems to be a lot of women related to that specific thing, smelling the air, figuring out who you needed to be, and that sense of tiptoeing around your mother.
Well, it's exhausting for sure, and
Yeah.
I can only imagine what you will be hearing from your readers and at your events and people who will connect with this book in so many different ways. And speaking of events, tonight you will be in conversation, oh my goodness, I haven't seen Beth Feldman in many years, of Roll Mommy at the Eastchester Barnes & Noble, right, yes, in Scarsdale. I'll say hi to Beth for me. I remember interviewing her so many years.
Aww.
And go to janegreen.com, click on events to see if she'll be where you are, or you should go where she's going to be. Also, June 9th, you'll be at An Unlikely Story up in Massachusetts, which is a great bookstore. Have you been? Have you seen it?
I have not, no.
Oh, it's fabulous, really special. And so that's on the 9th, and just all over the place. I would be at your event June 21st because that one looks awesome, except for I'm having my summer event the same night.
Oh.
But that one.
And who do you have this summer?
This summer we have Jillian Cantor,
yep.
Laura Dave, and I saw you'll be with Laura in July. I think July 12th. I saw that. And debut novelist Angelica Baker, Our Little Racket is her book.
Oh, well, it'll be, your events are always wonderful. And I have to say, Laura Dave is one of my all-time superstar favorites.
She's awesome, yeah. I'm a big fan, and I was very excited about this book. It comes out July 11th. And our event is June 21st. They had switched the date on her book. So we have dispensation to sell those books 3 weeks early. So huge reading with Robin because it was already set. And I'm like, well, I guess we're going to have to figure that one out because the event sold out right away. So it was like really kind of fun. I know. So otherwise I would be at that event. And then also, I don't remember how you say her last name, the third author, because I love that book. Malloy is
Miley Malloy.
Malloy.
Okay. Miley Malloy?
Yes, is that yes. I loved that book.
She's a wonderful
Do not be
writer.
alarmed. Don't be alarmed. Something. Yeah, this is what happens when you don't have all of your books in front of you when you're doing an interview. But I love that. That's going to be a great event. And so go to janegreen.com and click on events and see where Jane will be because your events are always a blast. I mean, they just are. People love to come see you. This book is set in Westport, where you live in Connecticut. How does that? And I was reading on some of the press material something about it being an easy way to set a story. And I don't think there's probably anything too easy about any of this. What is it about setting it, on the home field advantage that's fun for you?
Well, I first of all, Westport is such a rich town for material, and there are so many different Westports.
Sure.
There are. It's extraordinary. There's Old Westport and the townies, and my husband is very much part of Old Westport, and then there's New Westport and the kind of wealthy Westport, and there are the yoga mummies, and there's everything here, and the artists and the writers, and there's so much rich material here, and I'm always interested in Old Westport. Actually, I have found myself often gravitating towards an older Westport, or writing about Westport in a way that focuses on the bits that I like the most. And I think Westport is very much a character. It's a town that has character, and I think I love that I'm starting to write about it much more frequently in my books, and I think it's become a character of its own.
Yeah, I think it's really charming, and certainly my own connection to the town. And I always just think of I Love Lucy when they moved to Westport. I mean, that was one of my favorite parts about that show. Not that it ended after that was sad, but other than that, I loved the Westport connections. And if it was good enough for Paul Newman, right, and Joanna Woodward, it was good enough for Ronni.
Which is exactly
Sunshine.
what Ronni says in the novel.
Exactly.
When they have to move to the East Coast, and she doesn't know where to live. And when she finds out that Paul and Joanne live in Westport, she says, well, if it's good enough for Paul and Joanne, it's good enough for Ronni Sunshine.
I love that. I think that's so much fun. And when you write a book, I don't remember how long ago it would have been that you had turned it in, and then, of course, your writing world moves on. Which things about the characters, or which particular parts about the story are things that, if somebody says, I'm reading the Sunshine Sisters, what is going on in your head? Like, oh, I wonder if they like the part where, without giving anything away, because of course there are never any spoilers, on Reading with Robin?
Well, I always wonder what they're going to think about Nell's storyline. That was the only part that I really did want to write, only because what I tend to do is I look around me and see what's going on, and if I see something happening to more than one person, I start sort of thinking, well, is this a thing? And I did wonder, and in fact, my agent even said at the time, "Are you sure that
it's such a thing? It's definitely a thing. I have stories forever."
And I just thought, well, I do, because this is happening, and middle-aged women are finding out that their lives are not at all going in the direction that they thought it was going to go in, particularly with love and romance and sexuality. And so I knew I had to explore that, because the other thing is, I think if you're writing honestly about real things that are happening to people then real women are going to relate.
Absolutely.
So that's my big one. And also, I guess I always wonder, what are they going to think of Lizzy? Because Lizzy behaves so appallingly, especially when we first come back to meet her as an adult. In fact, my husband was in bed reading the book, and he was reading very quietly, and all of a sudden he went,
You must have been like, wait, what did you read? What is this?
Yeah, but it was very funny. So she kind of behaves in such an awful way that you think you should hate her. You want to hate her, and yet you can't, I think. And so I always worry, gosh, are people going to be so offended by this? Will they hate her? But thus far, everyone has said exactly that. They feel like they should hate her, but you can't help but love her because
they're all
she is.
Lovable in different ways. And I thought it was really interesting reading about some of the information and the press materials that come about the women and how you came to draw these characters, Nell and Meredith and Lizzy, and that you draw upon people, or you would notice somebody and you take certain characteristics. So is that always sort of running through your mind when you're out and about? Yeah,
it is, and what it does is it gives me a visual. So I had, like, Nell, for example. I had Nell physically looks exactly like somebody I once met in a store. Now, I don't know what this girl's personality is. I had a brief chat with her, but physically, she every time I think of Nell, I see this girl.
Yeah.
And it really helps me to understand who I'm writing about. It acts as almost an anchor.
Like
knowing what they look
or,
like and how they move really anchors that character for me.
So, and is that when you're writing, you're thinking of that? When you're writing Nell's voice, you're like imagining that her body,
when I'm seeing scenes in my head, I'm seeing this girl.
Walking through, it's so interesting. So you're really always thinking, and wherever you sort of are.
You never ever know when and where inspiration's going to strike.
Yeah, it must be very exciting. And I certainly don't want to ask you what you're working on now, which is, of course, a way of doing
because I am
doing exactly that. Well,
I am. I'm always working on something. So I just finished reading and doing some small edits on the script of The Beach House, which was a movie.
I was going to. I wanted to ask about that. That's so exciting.
Tempting Fate has also sold to Lifetime.
Wow.
As a movie, with a view to a series. And
congratulations, that's
so
cool.
Thank you. And I'm writing my 20th novel.
Wow.
I don't feel old enough. This just isn't right.
Well, it's not possible.
Novels, I can't believe it.
It's hashtag new math. Don't worry if you're doing that. That
funny.
Is really exciting because that's what your readers want to know. And I'm talking with Jane Green, and just out today, it's the Sunshine Sisters. Put this at the top of your list, at the top of your beach bag or your purse or wherever you're going, and just know that you were in for such a treat. I can't wait to hear what everybody has to say about this. We'll be sharing a lot on Reading with Robin and talking it up, of course. And what will you be reading this summer in between all of the other writing?
Oh, my gosh. There are so many good books this summer. I'm desperate to read Laura Dave's book, actually. and Miley Malloy's. I haven't read those yet, so those are on my list. But everybody has books out this summer.
They do.
There are some really too many to choose, and I have to throw in some nonfiction as well.
Please do.
I just finished The Road to Jonestown, which is the new book about the Jonestown massacre, and I'm slightly fascinated by it. But yeah, Courtney Sullivan's book came out recently, which is wonderful. Saints for All Occasions, just one of my favorites of the year. The Arrangement, Sarah Dunn.
Great book too.
That was a great one.
Well, we like a lot of the same books, so I'm asking for the audience to know, but of course I need to know. And the Sunshine Sisters is in my summer list. That was in the Providence Journal, so I'm very excited too. It was one of my top summer picks, and as well as Courtney's, which I loved, and that interview's up on iTunes somewhere. I agree. It's just a bevy of awesome books, but The Road to Jonestown, I wouldn't picture that as being a book that you're reading. It just seems so dark. Well, we know what it was.
Well, yes, somebody else said that to me recently, but I find that whole the whole idea of a demagogue who got people to believe in him in the way that he did, and
sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it?
Yes, in these times there are some parallels. So
a little crazy.
So I found myself fascinated by it.
Yeah, I can imagine, and there's so much to read where I've read books too where somebody will say to me, I don't picture that, because it's fun to just go all over the place, and you never know what you'll connect with, especially if it was something that was of recent history or recent enough where the story is so compelling, and that you wonder, would that play out the same way today?
Yeah.
And what else is going on, certainly in our ever-changing landscape of life here. So we'll just throw Jonestown in with, Laura Dave and Courtney Sullivan.
Summer reading.
a little bit something light for the beach.
Yeah.
Something to put next to the Sunshine Sisters. Jane, thank you so much for your time and for sharing with the Reading with Robin audience. And people, go to janegreen.com. Again, click on events, see where she'll be, and do yourself a huge treat of an afternoon or an evening and go see one of these events or the luncheons that you're doing. They're always awesome, and people just love to hear from you and read what you're writing and share and all of it. And I'm very excited about the movie news and everything, really. And my pleasure to have you on as always. And I look forward to seeing you.
Robin. The pleasure was all mine. It's always lovely. And I hope you have a wonderful summer.
Same to you, and happy Pub Day, the
Thank
Sunshine
you.
Sisters.